Hello and welcome back to the Bliss Bean. This is the second time that I'm filming this video, which is becoming a common pattern. Last time it was because I realized all of the footage was out of focus. This time it was because I lost my SD card. So as you can tell, I'm just really good at this YouTube thing. So this video is going to be all about how I self-study Korean, why I started learning it, what resources I'm using, my study routine, everything like that. I am focusing on Korean, but I think a lot of the tips that I'm going to share are just going to apply to any language that you might be learning. So hopefully you'll find this useful wherever you are in the language learning world. So let's get started. So I'm going to start with explaining why I started learning Korean. I'm not going to lie, it was because of K-pop. Some people see this as an inferior reason to learn a language, which doesn't make any sense to me at all, because when you learn a language, you are contributing to the world's shared understanding of different cultures. There's no bad reason to start learning a language, at least not that I can think of. There are reasons that might be better in the sense that they're more motivating, but if something inspires you to pick up a language and start practicing it, you can't say that it's a bad reason. So K-pop or BTS was the primary reason for me starting to learn Korean, but then also I just really like the idea of the challenge of learning an Asian language. So I kind of know 2.5 languages. My first language was Lithuanian because I was born there, and then I learned English when my family and I immigrated to the US, but that was very natural because I was so young, so my brain was just really plastic. And then I learned Spanish at school by taking classes from about grade 7 to 11. I'm not confident enough in my Spanish skills though to call it 3 languages, so we're gonna go with 2.5. But yeah, as you can tell, all of those languages are European languages, and I just really wanted to try and learn something that was totally different and followed very different grammar rules and vocab and things like that. So as for the resources that I'm using to study Korean, I immediately knew I didn't want to use Duolingo because I use that a lot for Spanish, but I noticed that I liked it better for reviewing rather than actually learning new material. I just felt like the actual grammar content wasn't very comprehensive. I don't know, maybe I just didn't get far enough into it, but that was the experience that I had with it. Duolingo is still a great tool though. But I tried a different app. I tried an app called Memrise. Memrise is also free. You can get a premium subscription, and I did get one because it was on sale for 50% off during the World Cup or something, and I had tried the free version for a while and really liked it. So I used Memrise to take me through learning the Korean alphabet, which is called Hangul. I'm so sorry if I butcher these pronunciations. I'm trying my best, so please just bear with me. So Memrise was really good at taking you through all of the letters of Hangul and then teaching you some basic phrases like hello, yes, no, thank you. But as I kept using it, I just found myself frustrated again with how little depth there was to the lessons. When I'm learning something, I'm the type of person who wants to know everything. But for example, the app would ask you to give the infinitive form, to be hungry, as well as a conjugated form, like I am hungry. And while they taught you the words, they didn't explain how you got from the infinitive version to the conjugated version. Again, maybe I just didn't get far enough, but I really didn't like the way that it was being taught. I wanted to know how everything worked as soon as I was introduced to it. So I decided to only use Memrise as a tool for practicing vocab because it is really good for that, but I went out in search of a website that would actually teach me more of the grammatical concepts that I was looking for. I looked into a couple. One of the more popular ones is called Talk to Me in Korean. Basically, I just dug around the internet a little bit, but I settled on one called www.howtostudykorean.com, a very clear web address. So howtostudykorean.com claims that it has everything that you need to learn Korean, and as far as I can tell, they deliver on that promise because they have so much information. Everything on there is free, except I think if you want some special workbooks or worksheets or downloadable audio files, but you can definitely get by without spending any money on that website. Okay, so now for the tools that I use to study Korean. So obviously that website is one of the tools, and then the second most important thing is my precious notebook. I used to have this really nice cover where I had written Hangulga, which means Korean language. Unfortunately that fell off, and now I guess I'm just promoting this university that I did a summer camp at. I'm not affiliated with them in any way. So my Korean notebook has 3 sections. The first section is for grammar. At the top of each page, I write the number of the lesson and then the title of it. And then I just take notes. And I have a specific formatting system because I wanted it to all look cohesive. There's a certain way that I do headings, a certain way that I do bullet points, and most importantly, there's a certain way that I highlight. So before I started this notebook, I decided to pick a couple of highlighters and just decide right away what my system would be. That's one of the things that I talked about in my study tips video if you're interested. So as you can see, all of my headings are in capital letters, underlined, and then with a pink box around them. information that is particularly important is in yellow, and then practice sentences are in green. So that really helps when I'm looking back and studying, because one of the ways that I like to study is just by going back to those practice sentences and retranslating them. So if I go back to this lesson, I can immediately see which sentences I can practice translating, and I have the answers to those translations right there. When I'm doing practice sentences, there's usually so many of them that I don't want to fill up the grammar section of my notebook with them. So I put some of them in here so that I can look back and practice, but then most of the practice sentences I just do in like a spare notebook where I have blank pages. The next section is for vocab, which is probably my favorite because it is so satisfying to look back at all of the words I've learned. HowToStudyKorean.com gives you a list of like 50 vocab words, I believe, per lesson, so it's a lot of words, and I just like to keep like a word bank in this section where I write every single word that I'm introduced to. So my highlighting system for this section, purple is for nouns, red is for verbs, and then blue is for adjectives. I just write the Korean word, highlight it in the corresponding color, and then put an equal sign and the English translation. So this is a very simple list. I don't organize it by theme or anything. I just write them down as I learn them. The last section is idioms and phrases, which I haven't really used much, but I think I will as I get to like a more advanced level of Korean. Alright, so the next thing is my flashcards. For studying vocab, sometimes I use Memrise and sometimes I just use plain paper flashcards. So basically I just take those 3x5 index cards and I cut them into fourths because I do not need anything more than that. So I make a flashcard for each word, and then I combine all of the words from each group of 3 lessons into one deck. There's not really any reason for doing that, like they're not related in any way, but I just like the size of these decks. So I just make one card be like a cover card that says which lessons it's for, and then I have the English word on the front highlighted based on whether it's a noun, verb, or adjective, and on the back I have the Korean translation, and I just put that in a gray box so that I can quickly see which side is English and which side is Korean. So moving on to how I study, my study routine right now is... oh gosh, I just dropped all of them. My study routine right now is 25 minutes per day, Monday through Saturday, because I take a break on Sunday. Usually I do this at school during my study hall because I don't have a ton to do for my other classes, and also I just feel like I'm in the mental mode for learning when I'm at school. Otherwise, if I don't do it then I just find some time to do it at home. But what I do during the 25 minutes depends on what I feel like I need the most work on. So like for example, if I'm on lesson 8 and I feel like I've mastered the grammar, I don't want to move on to lesson 9 until I feel like I've also got the vocab down pat, because sometimes I just get too excited about like learning the grammatical concepts and I want to rush through that, but then I realize that I don't know any of the vocab that I'm being asked to translate in the practice sentences. So when I sit down to study, I basically just think about what needs the most work. Sometimes I spend the entire time practicing vocab, so what I'll do is I'll use either Memrise or my flashcards, but either way I pull out a piece of paper or that notebook that I use, and I just use it to write the words as I'm testing myself on them, because I find that I can memorize things a lot better if I see them, hear them, say them, and write them. I also try to incorporate some sort of memory trick for almost every word that I learned, because I learned that in AP Psych. It actually helps so much. Before I started doing that, I found that no matter how many times I ran through the vocab, I would just still forget the words. But then once I started trying to make like different connections in my brain that would help me remember those words, the memorization process went by so much faster. So yeah, I come up with memory tricks, I quiz myself, write the words, and then I just keep running through them until I feel like I've got them. When I'm going through the deck, I also like to pull out the words that I had trouble with so that at the end I can just run through those only a couple of times. And yeah, that's basically it. That's how I study vocab. Otherwise, if it is a grammar day and I feel like I need work on that, I'll either be going through a new lesson and taking notes on it, or going back to old lessons that I feel like I need a refresher on, just like rereading the notes, redoing the practice sentences, things like that. HowToStudyKorean.com also gives you practice videos at the end of each lesson. So usually there's one video that takes you through translating a bunch of practice sentences, and then another video where you listen to a native Korean speaker and then have to write down what they said. Both are really, really helpful, so sometimes I work on those. That's my brother. But yeah, for now, that's my whole Korean study process. Feel free to reach out to me if you have any questions about how I study, any questions about the other languages that I know, if you want an accountability buddy for your Korean studying. And yeah, that's it. So hopefully take 2 of this video went well and you find this video helpful. If you did, please like and subscribe. I really, really appreciate that. And next week, I'll be back with a video about how I design my thumbnails. Until then, goodbye. Wait, no, I mean annyeong.